So hello everyone. So as introduced, I am Jayan William Moore. I'm a software developer at Career Teams and have a 2 years experience with Python. So my Python experience started way back in college. So my two internship and my first job is all about Python, Django, Flask, and Fast API, together with relational databases such as MySQL and PostgreSQL. So without further ado, let's start our talk of getting more out of PostgreSQL, debugging, optimization, and integration with Python and SQL Alchemy. So let's start first with what is PostgreSQL. So PostgreSQL is an open source object relational database system known for advanced features and reliability. It's ideal for complex data workloads. And one of the strengths of PostgreSQL is extensibility. So PostgreSQL offers extensive support for data integrity and extensibility, making it a popular choice among developers for various applications. Additionally, PostgreSQL also boasts its ACID compliance since 2001. So what does it mean to be ACID compliant? So ACID doesn't mean yung acidity sa tiyan. So ACID refers to atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability, which are the properties of a reliable database system. So for context alignment, all of the examples that will be used in this talk is all about e-commerce database. So e-commerce data application with main tables like users, orders, and order items, facilitating effective data management and retrieval. So starting with the first phase, debugging your database. I think everyone would agree, those who write codes or create side projects, that most of your time is spent on debugging your code. At the same time, this is what you do also in your database. 10 seconds or even 5 second loading time on a page is for us already slow. And aside from slow network connection, inefficient data retrieval is also part of that culprit. So debugging slow queries is essential for maintaining optimal database performance, ensuring queries run efficiently and return results promptly. And one of the way for us to inspect our queries performance is using explain command. So explain command together with analyze and buffers option help us gain insights into query performance and execution plans to identify inefficiencies. And one of the ways it can help us is it helps us understand PostgreSQL how PostgreSQL executes queries to help us optimize the database interactions and improve application responsiveness significantly. So later I will show some example output of the explain command. So at first, it should be known that SQL is declarative in nature. It allows users to specify what data are they needed rather than outlining the procedural steps to obtain it. So later, the explain command will reveal how PostgreSQL plans to execute the query, detailing the method and order of operations for optimal performance. And lastly, the main key metrics we're going to look at the output of explain, the planning time, execution time, cost, rows, and buffers, which provide insights into query efficiency. So let's move on to our example. For example, we have a query to select all the orders in the table in the orders table with user ID is equal to 42. So to analyze the efficiency of this query, we're going to use the command explain, analyze buffers, and the query right after. So it will provide us these output. So as you can see, it provides us a query plan and the summary of the execution. So I know it might be overwhelming to look at it at first, but we're going to dissect the information we needed from this output. So let's start first with the summary. For the planning time and execution time. So planning time refers to the amount of time the PostgreSQL determined the best way to run the query, and the execution time is the amount of time it took to complete the query. So that is the summary of the explain and analyze buffers. Next is the stages or the query plan. Uh, every plan or every stage, it follow this format. Plan node type on relation and the estimated cost rows and width and the actual time rows and loops. We have also some extra information and importantly the buffers. So in this example, we have the plan node type parallel sequential scan. It means that it provides three workers to simultaneously scan the whole orders table. So in this case, on relation, it means we are applying parallel sequential scan on the orders table. So the actual time it took is to start from 11.357 milliseconds to 18.712 milliseconds. And the rows um, um, determine how many rows each worker returned after this stage. So it means our workers, each worker returns three successful or matched rows out of 333,333 rows. It means that in this stage, all of our workers scanned the whole 1 million rows of our orders table. So we also have this some extra information that in this stage we filter using user ID is equal to 42, and using that filter we're able to remove 333,330 rows in that stage. And the most important thing to dissect here is the buffers. So we have shared hit and shared read. So what does it mean? The shared hit means that 9,188 unit block of data was scanned using the disk, which using the memory, which is much faster than having a shared read, which is means that 8,959 unit blocks are read from the disk, which is much slower. So when optimizing query, we want to reduce first, of course, the execution time, but at the same time lower the shared hit and shared read. So one way to optimize, we are now in the optimization phase. One way to optimize our query is by using index. So what are index? So index is a data structure designed to optimize the speed of data retrieval operations on a database table. So one analogy for this is think of an index like a book index. It allows you to jump directly to the relevant information without searching through all the pages. So without an index, a database executes a full table scan, which can significantly slow down query response times for large dataset. As you seen earlier in the example, the first stage is a parallel sequential scan, which scans the whole rows of the orders table, which contains 1 million rows, which is quite large dataset. So there are a lot of types of indices in PostgreSQL, but we're going to focus on the three: the binary tree, the general inverse index, and the block range index. So starting with the binary tree. So binary tree are the default type of PostgreSQL. It is optimized for equality and range lookups, providing efficient data access. The best use case for binary tree are those fields with unique value, such as your primary key, your foreign key in your table, and even created at. For GIN or the general inverse index, it is best to use on complex data types like JSON binaries or arrays. It making them ideal for full text search operation. And lastly, for the block range index from the word block range, it summarizes data ranges, making them suitable for large append-only tables where only a subset of data is required. Now, moving on the command and how we can create index in our PostgreSQL. So following this command, we need to, the command is create index, the index name, which is optional on the specific table using, then we going to specify what type of index we're going to use and on what column. So starting with the B tree. So as I said earlier, B3 is the default type of PostgreSQL. So you can just write create index user ID on orders user ID without specifying the type, since binary tree is already default. Using the same example earlier, remember that the execution time of that query is 29 milliseconds. But after using index, we can see that our execution time was reduced down to 0.340 milliseconds with planning time of 0.499 milliseconds. And also, you can observe that our query plan was changed from parallel sequential scan to bitmap index scan using our created index. And that actually reduced the actual time from 0.244 to 0.244 execution time. At the same time, it already retains the number of rows it matched, which is 9, in just one run. So as you can see also that our buffers reduced from 9,000 to 8,000 and 8,000 respectively down to shared hit 3 and for the shared read 3, which is much smaller data to extract. Now, for the general inverse index, we want to use it on complex data types as JSON binaries. So, for example, we have a products table that we want to get all the products where the attributes matches color red and size M. Without the index, we would have an execution time of 111 milliseconds with um, a query plan of parallel sequential scan in which we scan 1 million rows on the products table. So by adding the index, which is create index index products attribute gene on products using gene index on the attributes column, we were able to reduce the execution time down to 69.276 milliseconds. And our query plan was changed from parallel sequential scan to the bitmaps index scan on on our newly created index, and that actually reduce our actual time on this stage, resulting to lesser execution time. Now, for the block range index, for example, we want to fetch all the orders created an hour before. So without the index, we have an execution time of 139 milliseconds, and as you can see in our buffers, we have a lot of read. So a lot of data to read from, therefore affecting our execution plan. But by adding the block range index, we were able to reduce our execution time down to 4 milliseconds. And as you can see in the query plan, we are not now using the parallel sequential scan. Instead, we are going to use the bitmap index scan on our created index. Now, why do we use the block range index in the created at instead of the binary tree? Binary tree still can be used created at. However, when we have a lot of data, the disk used by the binary tree is much bigger. Rather, instead of using the block range index. Now that we see the power of index in optimizing or speeding up our data retrieval, why do we not add index on all our columns? So yes, index can improve our data retrieval, but it also affects our writes. The more index we have in our table, the longer the write is, because as mentioned earlier, index is also a table that need to be synced on our data table. So every time we add row on our orders, we need to also update our index in this uh, index orders created at Green. So that's why the rule of thumb when creating index is index what you need instead of indexing what you can. So moving on the next optimization, we have the views and the materialized views. So the difference between the two, views is a virtual table that stores the query logic. It should be highlight that it stores the query logic, allowing users to simplify complex queries without data duplication. On the other hand, the materialized views stores the query results physically, improving performance by providing pre-computed results and minimizing execution time for expensive queries. Now, when is the best time to use views or material views? Both should be used when you have a complex data or an expensive query. However, you want to use view if you want your data or the results fresh or sync with the data table. Materialized views should be used if you have expensive data that has a tolerance and staleness. So let's move on how do we create the command for creating views. So first, for creating view, you can just create view, the name of your table, which is active users, as and your query. So select ID name from users where status is equal to active. On the other hand, when creating materialized views, you want to create the command is create materialized view, the virtual name, the table's name, which is daily sales, as and the query. So let's see them in action. So first is the view. For example, we have this query. Select ID status from orders where status is equal to completed. This is such a simple query, but let's just assume that this is such a complex query. So by creating view, create view completed completed orders as the same query, we can fetch or we can run this query using this command. select star from completed orders rather than running this command. So we can save a lot of space and we can make sure that our complex data query is correct. So it is basically a creating a variable name for your complex query. On the other hand, for example, this is the scenario where the materialized view is best used. For example, you are dealing with a slow query in an e-commerce or ordering processing system, and your database now have 100,000 users, a million orders, and a million order items. You are tasked to show the top 20 customers in the last 90 days with the total revenue, including the number of orders, total number of items purchased, and the average order value, but only for customers with at least 3 completed orders. The scenario itself is already complicated. And this is the query for that. Scott, medyo taas siya. So to inspect the performance of this query, we're going to run the explain analyst buffers. And without materialized view, as you can see, we have a very long query plan, execution time of 394.58 milliseconds, and a lot of buffers in this. A little bit of survey. For example, if you have a lot of stages in your query plan, it is quite hard or overwhelming to read or to dissect information from. So one way for that is to use some help in website. For example, explain.depes.com. It actually sorts or add a visualization of your query plan and highlights what are the inefficient stages of this query plan. So you can buy color coding. But if you want some modern look, you can use the explain.dalibo.com. It also provides this tree-like visualization of your query plan, but also have the indication of what are your the slow stages, and the high cost stages. So moving back on the materials view, so we're going to create a materials view for that query. But as you can see here, as much as possible when creating materials view, you want it to be reusable. So as you can see, we remove all the filtering from from the previous query down to this. So we remove the average order value, we remove the limit of 20, we remove the um, ordering, and we also remove the constraint of having orders more than or greater than 3. So to use materialized view, we can run this query, which is select star round or total revenue over total orders, having 2 decimal places as the average order value from the user sales 90D, which is our materialized view, where the total orders is greater than or equal to 3, ordered by the total revenue in descending order, and limit by 20. Remember earlier that our execution time without materialized view was 350 300 plus milliseconds. And by creating materials view, we were able to reduce it down to 23 milliseconds. So that is the power of materialized view. At the same time, our query plan was reduced into these stages only, in which we are going to scan only the materialized view we created. So our execution time was reduced down to 23.519 milliseconds. So if that, so the overview of materialized views, earlier our query has a lot of joins, users, orders, and order items to aggregate essential data for the business analysis. Additionally, it has also a lot of calculations. The total order, the total items sold, the total revenue, and the average order, making it expensive query. So by utilizing materials view, we significantly reduce the execution time from 394 milliseconds to just 23 milliseconds, enhancing operational efficiency and responsiveness. But what is the trade-off of materials view? The trade-off of materials view, remember earlier I said that it stores the pre-computed or pre-calculated results. Therefore, if ever your orders or your order items or any of that tables was changed, your materialized view is become stale or outdated. So it should be refreshed. So, for example, this is the output of that the select earlier. we see we have 20 top 20 users that has the highest total orders, and by descending order. And I want you to focus on this top one ID with user ID 39315. Our total orders is 8, total items is 56, and so on. What if we insert another row in that table? We say that in orders we insert another order for um, user with user ID 39315, and we add 3 items on that in the order items. That is also referencing this order. If we are going to create the materialized view again, you can see that nothing has changed. So this materialized view is now outdated. So for us to sync or to refresh, to make this fresh materialized view, we need to refresh this materialized view. So the command for it is refresh materialized view user sales 90D. So basically, it just rerun your whole query to store the updated value in the user sales 90D. So if we're going to run it again, you can see now that our first row is now updated. Our total orders was now updated from 8 to 9, and our 3 items was now included in the total of um, the top one customer. So that's it for the optimization. Now let's move on to the integration in your Python application. Um, when integrating Postgres database or Postgres SQL database to your Python application, one of the most used libraries is the SQL Alchemy. So SQL Alchemy serves as the bridge between Python application and PostgreSQL, facilitating seamless communication and data manipulation. SQL Alchemy doesn't just bridge specifically for PostgreSQL. You can also use your MySQL or other database. So the core of SQL Alchemy is the expression toolkit, allowing developers to construct complex queries programmatically and efficiently. And SQL Alchemy is an ORM, or an object relational mapper. Feature maps database tables to Python classes, streamlining data access and object management in applications. So how can we use um, initializing SQL Alchemy? First, we need the necessary libraries. We need to install SQL Alchemy, and since we're going to use Postgres SQL, we need scicop G2 binary. This is the library we're going to use. So first is we need to create the engine or the bridge of Postgres SQL and SQL Alchemy. So from SQL Alchemy, import create engine, we have our database URL, and then we're just going to use this function, create engine. So we paste our database URL. This echo true is useful when you are in a development environment, because it's going to provide you the SQL query of your function. Now, after creating the engine, you can now define your models. So in SQL Alchemy, models are defined as Python classes that map to the database tables, facilitating easy interaction with the database. So we're going to create later an example user class, which is a user class includes attributes like ID and email, representing the corresponding database columns for each entry. And I'm going to show you also how to use SQL Alchemy to perform CRUD operations in your database. So let's start with the model. So as you can see earlier we said that our user model are Python classes. So we have class user using the declarative base of our ORM, and then its columns. So we have ID, which is an integer, and we set this as primary key. Additionally, we have email, in which it is a string, it is unique, and it should be not null. And lastly, we have the name, which is a string and not null. And when we try to string, or I think everyone, if you're familiar with Python, when you try to get a representation of this user, it will return this user ID, self ID, and email self email. So this line base metadata create all engine, we say that our SQL Alchemy should run or create all our models using the engine we've defined earlier. So after creating that, so after running that, your SQL Alchemy will run this SQL command. Create table users, which are contains the column we defined earlier. The ID, which is the primary key, our email, which is a varchar or string, not null and unique. Also our name, which is varchar, not null. It is directly similar with this one. So we have unique true, nullable false, and nullable false. So now that we've created our tables, time to ask for a session. Session is like having connection or having a live connection for your database into your SQL Alchemy ORM. So to create a session, we need to import our session maker function. We need to bind the engine we've created earlier and then run a instance of this session local. And then we have our own session. Our session is used when creating um, for the CRUD operation. For example, we want to create a new user. So instead of writing this SQL command in your database, you can use it in your Python application by instantiating a user model, which is we've defined earlier. We supplement it with the necessary information like email and name, and we use the session. We use the session we defined also earlier. The session add the new user, and the session that commit is typically basically saying that we want to save our recent changes in our database. So after you run the session commit, it will run this command in your database. Insert users, email, and name with the values aliceexample.com and Alice as the name. So that's it for the CRUD. Now, for example, you have a scenario that you are tasked to write a function to insert a product, but if it already exists, update the price and attributes. Now, if looking just in this scenario, we are expecting to first check if the product does exist. If it does not exist, create the product. If exists, you just update the price and attributes. It's quite complex or has a lot of stages. But with SQL Alchemy upsert or on conflict function, you can make it easier. So the upsert in SQL Alchemy is the insert statement allows you to add new row to a table, ensuring existing data remains unchanged if conflicts arises. Additionally, SQL Alchemy provides a conflict handling function on conflict do update or on conflict do nothing. So you can manage conflicts by updating existing records instead of causing duplicate key errors during insert. So one thing about insert, if you're trying to insert in invalid data, for example, you're trying to insert a product with the same ID, and ID was constrained as unique, your insert statement will throw an error. But with conflict handling, you can do or you can manage that error gracefully. So example scenario, for instance, certain products SKU and price showcases how the upsert pattern efficiently updates existing records without duplicating entries. So this is very useful when you have concurrency in your database. So for example, you have this insert statement where saying insert in the products, the values are SKU 1, 2, 3, the price and attributes, and we have the upsert statement. We're just saying that if this statement throws an error on regarding this index or the SKU, we just gonna set the price or on conflict do update. So if this statement throws a conflict or there's a conflict on the SKU na property, it will run this command, which is we're going to set the price to statement excluded price, which is this one, and the attributes, which also this one. Or we can also have do nothing statement, that on statement, if this throws a conflict, just do nothing. So that is the power of upsert in SQL Alchemy, making it simpler to handle errors. So now that we are done with integrating your database to your Python application using SQL Alchemy, now we're going to you're going to learn one of the important thing when building side projects with relational databases. That is version control of your database. So Alembic for PostgreSQL. So Alembic is a Git for your database. Anyone who are familiar with Git, So Git is essentially a version control for your code base. So Alembic is a version control but for your database. It enables systematic management and tracking of schema changes over time. It is useful when doing projects or collaboratively, so you can track your schema changes for your database. So it handles migrations safely and automatically, ensuring that updates are applied correctly without disrupting existing data or functionality. That is the power of Alembic. Additionally, Alembic offers a reviewable, reversible, and automated migration process, enhancing collaboration among developers and maintaining integrity of the database schema. So that is the power of the Alembic. It's reviewable since it will provide you a script of your changes. It is reversible, so if ever your current version is throwing some error, you can roll back to the stable version. And automated, since Alembic will handle the migration for you. So how do we, or the workflow steps of Alembic? First is installation. So to get started, install Alembic using command pip install. I'm going to show it later. Next is configuration. We're going to configure our Alembic to create migrations directory for managing schema changes. And lastly, how are we going to create the migration script, which is auto-generated by your Alembic. So first, for the installation, we're going to need this library, pip install Alembic, and to initialize your Alembic program to have a migration, you're going to run Alembic init migrations. As you can see, it will provide these directories. You will have your Alembic INI. You will also have your directory of migrations, which consists your versions and your environment.py and some other um, files regarding Alembic. So, in your Alembic INI, it is important to change your SQL Alchemy URL. You'll find this line, and you should input your database URL. Of course, this is just an example. In real projects, this should be stored in your environment file to make it secured. Next, in your migrations env.py, specifically under this file, you need to import all your models. So from applet models import base, you will find this variable in this file, the target metadata. You need to set it to base.metadata so that your Alembic can run your migrations using your models in your SQL Alchemy. So how do we apply migrations using Alembic? So first, we already done the initial setup, installing Alembic and then initializing migrations. Next is configuration. We already configured the database URL and configuration file to connect models with the database. And lastly, we are next to this, migration creation. Use the command Alembic revision auto-generate -m and your version, or in this like git comment, your comment, to create migration scripts reflecting changes in your database schema. So for example, we already done the users table. For example, we've created a user table. By running Alembic revision auto-generate -m create user table, it will provide you this file. It is already, this is automatically written by Alembic, which is we have your initial migrations, the revision ID, the created out of this migration, and it will already import the necessary library for Alembic, SQL Alchemy, and typing. And you have two main functions here, the upgrade and the downgrade. Now, upgrade schema is your updated or your changes. So as you can see earlier, it created index, which is the users, and the necessary column. This is an example of my personal project. So, di na siya same ganina na user class. So, example we have here, all the list na needed sa create table, and then the index also. And we have the downgrade, which is going to reverse this operation. So, you can see, from create table, in our downgrade, we have drop table. We have create index in our upgrade. In our downgrade, we have drop index. And this is automatically created by Alembic. However, in real life, you also need to review this upgrade. because based on experience, even though there is Alembic migrations, there are some times na di na gina-review ang upgrade and it causes errors in the long run. Especially if they started in different na versions ng database. So to run your migration or to upgrade your database version, you go just to run the command alembic upgrade head. If you want to roll back from a previous version, you're just going to run the code alembic downgrade -1. So you're technically saying that we want to go back to the version before the current version. So that is how to upgrade and roll back your database version in your SQL Alchemy. So key takeaways, to summarize everything, you want to use explain to debug slow queries, allowing you to analyze how PostgreSQL execute your queries to improve performance. Second is to use indexing to improve your query performance by reducing search time through optimized data lookups in your tables. And you want to use materialized views to help optimize heavy aggregation queries by storing pre-computed results, reducing execution time and resource consumption. And for the integration, you want to use SQL Alchemy to provide a robust ORM layer, simplifying database interaction and enhancing development efficiency with Python application. And lastly, the Alembic to facilitate database version control, allowing developers to manage schema migration easily and ensure consistent database changes across environments. And that's all for this talk about getting more out of PostgreSQL, debugging, optimization, and integration with SQL Alchemy and Python. So thank you guys.